guys. Welcome to another exciting episode on the show, Control or Be Controlled. A podcast designed to help you start thinking differently and take control of your life. And as always, I remain your host, Darlington. Our guest for today is Morizio. Matt, welcome to the show.
Thank you so much for having me. I'm excited to be on this. I really appreciate the opportunity.
All right, Matt, I would like you to introduce yourself to my audience.
Sure. Well, I am a husband of 16 years, a father to 8 children. My oldest is 14. My youngest is just about 4 months, just turned 4 months. So it's a busy, full household. A former pro athlete turned entrepreneur. I'm a couple years into launching my own business. I started at 40 years old with 7 children at the time, so I'm not really a poster child for conformity. But the business is called Reconstructing Wealth. It's a financial planning and wealth management firm that I launched a couple years ago, really on a mission to hopefully change the way a generation views and uses money. I really want to reconstruct people's relationships with money. But people come to me on a day-to-day basis to help with financial planning, help figure out how to invest their money so they can achieve their goals and really live a life, to me, live a life that they don't feel like they need a vacation from. That's the real goal.
All right, Matt, thank you so much. You spent 2 decades pursuing professional baseball before being released by the Royals. How did that moment reshape your identity? And what did it teach you about handling life's unexpected setbacks?
Well, it reshaped my identity because what I learned, unfortunately, was that I learned the hard way was that my identity was actually wrapped up in what I did, which was baseball player. It was not about who I was, or whose I was even. So I realized that when I got released, I had been chasing a 20-year plus dream, from 5 years old to 25, 26, that I also identified with, if I'm being honest. And even if I was mature enough emotionally to say, I don't identify as a baseball player, it's just something I do. Let's just say that was the case, which it wasn't, by the way. But even if that was the case, it was really hard to escape that identity when I went to places because my reputation sort of preceded me, where I would introduce myself and they'd say, oh yeah, you're the baseball guy, right? So even if I tried internally to change my identity, externally, it kept kind of getting revalidated. But when that identity is stripped from you, in other words, when I'm released, or which is the kind baseball way of saying when I'm fired, I have to rethink who I am because I am no longer a baseball player. And actually, I'm grateful for that moment, really, because I used baseball as my identity, which was the problem, and it forced me to lean into something that wasn't going to fail me eventually, because baseball did. 20 years later, it did. And it really helped me grow in my faith in that season. So I will tell anybody, if you're working on identity, especially if your identity is wrapped up in what you do as a career, then recognize first, it's not who you are. It's just something you do. It's part of you. And second, it will eventually let you down or fail you or change. And no, it will no longer be your identity. So if you really want to identify something, it's got to be something that anchors you and sustains you for your life. So I would say my faith for me is that, that's never going to leave me, never going to fail me. So it helped me grow in that area. And I would say that's really probably the most important piece. And it taught me, I guess, because life pivoted so quickly, like to your second question about change, it taught me that it will always be different and it will never go like it's planned. Because I had big plans. I was going to make it to the big leagues. I was going to, have multiple homes. I was going to have a family. I was going to use that platform for good. And none of that actually came to be true. So having that identity stripped in the same moment my entire life needed to pivot was really a really powerful moment for me, because I had to actually recognize, hey, life is not going to go as planned, and you have to be able to be flexible and adaptable, I would say, to figure out where your next calling is. And the last point on this is that when you are driving the bus of your life, like you're full blown in charge, and it gets really stressful and really emotional. But when you can sort of take the passenger seat of life, metaphorically speaking, and let something bigger drive. A lot of people, is if you're a person of faith, maybe it's your God will drive, or like the universe or something, being pulled in a direction by a higher power. In other words, running towards something, not running from something. That's a much healthier way to live. So that was a big, powerful learning moment for me, because I ran toward baseball for a long time, I was running toward baseball, yes, for a long time. And now I feel like I'm being pulled in a direction, right? Like I feel like I'm being pulled into a calling of helping people change their relationships with money.
All right. Thank you so much, Matt, for that very, very wonderful answer. So, moving on, my next question for you is this. So, you talk about emotionally detaching from money. That sounds counterintuitive to me. What does it mean, and how did that shift change your own life?
Yeah, that emotionally detaching from money is the hill I'm going to die on in terms of defining financial freedom. I know that today, financial freedom by definition is when you have enough money in your investment accounts to fund your life, so you no longer need to work. Work becomes optional. You are, quote unquote, financially free because you're not beholden to an income, to a salary at work in order to live your life. Well, because of the unique vantage point I have, and I've had thousands of conversations with people about their money and have helped hundreds of people with their money, I have sort of a window into the inside of people's financial lives. And I know plenty of people at this point who by definition are financially free because they have enough money to live without having to work, but they worry every day about their money. So I learned through these conversations that financial freedom has to be more than just having enough money to live, because these people don't seem free to me. They still seem like chained to their finances in some ways. So to me, emotionally detaching from your money, learning to separate your emotions and your money, that to me, in my experience, not just my own life, but other clients I work with, that's when I see people really live a life of freedom, right? Like they live a life of purpose, a life of calling, a life of fulfillment, because they don't worry every single day about if there's enough or what happens if the market's going down. Like they are not beholden to the swings of their investment accounts because they're living a bigger life on purpose. So to me, when did that happen? Shoot, it happened nearly a decade ago when I jumped into this industry, but it was because I at first had an awareness problem, to be honest with you. Most people that I speak with, myself included, have awareness problems when it comes to money. We don't really have money problems. We have awareness problems. I myself didn't know that I even had an unhealthy wiring, an unhealthy mindset around money, because it was all I knew. It was how I grew up. It's what I learned growing up. And learned, by the way, is not like somebody taught me around the dinner table. We didn't talk about money in my house. In my house, we grew up like if you didn't turn the heat down when you left. I used to live in Boston, Massachusetts, that area, and it's really cold in the winter. And so oil heat is expensive. I was the last one to leave the house, I had to turn the heat way down to conserve fuel. Now, if I didn't turn the heat way down, I got screamed at worse than any trouble I got in, worse than any bad grade I got. And what that was doing was sort of instilling in me a mindset around money. Now, it wasn't directly money, but it was because we were trying to conserve money. At the end of the day, don't waste money on fuel when you're not home. And I didn't know that was a problem because, shoot, when I played minor league baseball, I needed to learn how to squeeze a quarter out of a nickel, as they say. Like I needed to learn how to really make my money stretch. And so that wiring served me well, that scarcity wiring of like trying to stretch your dollars because I didn't get paid hardly anything playing minor league ball. Well, it wasn't until 10 years ago when I got into the financial advising world, I learned the language of money. I started to understand how it worked, and I started, more importantly, to interact with people who had healthy relationships with money, used their money effectively to grow, to help people, to live a life of purpose. And that's when I became aware, like, oh my gosh, I have been fearful and worried about this thing for the longest time. So it took an education and it took a process to really unwind a lot of those deeply rooted emotions around finances. But it really was just stuff that I caught from my mom, because that's who I grew up with. And she caught it from her grandparents because they didn't teach her. And her grandparents' parents were products of the Great Depression era. So it's like this scarcity mindset just keeps getting handed off generation to generation, until I now have chosen to be the one in my family lineage, my family tree, to break that generational chain, to say, my children will no longer have a scarcity, fearful, worried mindset around money. My children will understand money, use it for what it is, which is a tool to accomplish their purpose in life, nothing more. So I am grateful for the experience of learning becoming aware that I had a problem with money, and then doing the work to fix my problems with money, so that my children, and then generations beyond that, which is unquantifiable what that can mean, generations beyond that will view and use money completely differently.
All right, Matt, thank you so much. So you and your wife have built a family of 7 children while homeschooling and growing a business. What has that journey taught you about faith, leadership, and priorities?
Yeah, it's, as you can hear, I mean, homeschooling 7 children. Now we just had our 8th child a few months ago. So before we even talked, so 8 children, and, launching a business at 40 years old as the sole provider. So everyone's dependent on my income in order to eat. None of that, like I've always said, none of that is really a poster child for conformity type behavior. So I'm not that person. I've always gone against the grain of life. I think that's what helped me accomplish a big dream of playing professional baseball. I'm not afraid to fail. I would rather try and fail than not try at all. So I think that wiring really helps in what you described. And when I hear it, I'm like, man, that's a chaotic life. But I think that wiring really, really helps me with it. And I would just say that what it's taught me about faith is that, man, when you take these big leaps, even early on, for me, a big leap was like trying to find a job to feed the family. Like that felt like a really big leap. And then that happened. And then I had another child, and like trying to afford a couple kids is another big step. The farther and the bigger your life gets, the farther it goes, the bigger it gets, the more scary those leaps of faith seem to be. Like launching a business at 40 years old with 7 children at the time is a really big, scary leap, because I didn't know how I was going to, if everybody didn't come with me as clients, like I didn't know how I was going to feed the family, which means I needed this element of faith. There was a complete unknown in my life. Like if God didn't show up and perform some kind of miracle in my life there, I don't know how it was going to get done. And I'm learning that the more I want to really live a life of surrender, a life of faith, faith is moving forward without knowing the outcome, right? Having faith, believing in something that you can't see. If I have a plan for every area of my life, then I don't need faith anymore. So if I want to practice faith, actually practice faith, then I need to, by definition and using discipline, I need to create areas of my life that I have no idea how they're going to work out, which will require only faith and hard work, but faith to see them through. And so it's taught me that, gosh, if you want to grow into the life you're created to live, you need to start to push yourself beyond a comfort zone to step into the complete unknown, because that's where God will show up.
Okay, Matt. So for someone listening today who feels trapped by debt, fear, or financial uncertainty, what is the very first step they should take to begin changing both their finances and their mindsets?
Yeah, I think today there is no excuse to not learn something, right? The only excuse is I chose not to. And the reason I say that is because information is almost commoditized with artificial intelligence. So the information is out there. If you want to go get it, that's on you. If you choose not to and you want to take, which most people do, take the ostrich approach to life, which is you bury your head in the sand for 30 years and pick your head up and hope it all works out, then that's on you. But I think that it's not going to help you feel any more confident in your financial future if you bury your head in the sand. So I would encourage anybody today, if they're wondering, where do I start? How do I do this? There's two real paths in my experience, changing my relationship with money. One was being generous, actually being more generous, even though I had less money at the time I really started this, which was 2018, when I started really consistently every month giving money away in a disciplined process. I actually experienced the hardest financial times of my entire life. And so I'm giving money away while simultaneously having my income slashed in half and then half of that. So I actually was in a worse on paper financial situation, but because I started to give it away, my subconscious sort of rewired how I viewed money. And instead of being scarce around, thinking of it as scarce, being fearful of it, I was being abundant, loving with it and giving it away, which really rewired my emotions toward it unintentionally. That wasn't my plan. But that's one way to change your relationship with money. And the other is to get educated on it, which is what I started with. You could get started with AI. If you don't know where to get educated, ask AI, chat, Claude, whatever you want to ask. Hey, I am a novice when it comes to personal finances, but I want to become an expert. Where do you recommend I begin? What should I learn first? And then what are the next 2, 3, 4, 5 steps I should take on my way to becoming a personal finance expert? That's a great place to start.
Okay, Amath. So here is my final question for you. If every listener could remember just one lesson about money after today's conversation, what would you want that lesson to be?
I would want people to understand that being good with money is not over their head. Understanding how the game of money works, learning the language of money is not over their head, because I believed that. When I was getting into the industry before I was a financial advisor, I thought I needed to either have advanced degrees from the best universities in the world in order to understand how economics and how personal finance worked, or I needed to have a family lineage, a family history of people who worked in personal finance in order for me to get it, because otherwise I felt like it was way over my head and there was no way I was going to understand all of that stuff. Well, I'm here to tell you that as an outsider getting into the industry, right? I was playing baseball. I mean, I was standing in the outfield shagging balls before I became a financial advisor. I am here to tell you that you can get good with money, and you do not need the advanced degrees and the pedigree of personal finance in your life in order to get great, not just good, get great with your money. And it's not over your head and it's not too much. You just have to start. It does take work. It does take some introspective, deep diving. Hey, why do I think this way? What happened in my childhood that makes me feel this way about money or about people with money? You have to do the work, but that's as true with anything in life that's worth it. You got to do the work. But if you're willing to do the work, you can change your life, your relationship with money, and then your financial life.
So much. Thank you, Matt, for coming to my show. Thank you for sharing your story and your perspective on what it truly means to build wealth. So for those that would like to connect with you,
you're welcome.
Learn more. Those that would like to connect with you and learn more about your work, how can they do that?
Oh, I appreciate you asking. Well, you can visit my website, reconstructingwealth.com. You could also follow me on Instagram, which is at Matt Morizio, or even on X, which, formerly Twitter, at Matt Morizio. I'm pretty consistent out there, just putting myself out there to help people learn how the game of money works, also learn more about who I am. So feel free to send me a DM or follow me and ask any questions. I'm open, because that's how people are going to learn. Thank you.
All right. Have a wonderful day.
Okay. You too. Thanks for this.
Bye.
Bye.